Hello! We are back on our sourdough quest, and this time we are in the San Francisco Bay Area, and this is the bread we are going to talk about. Let's go back in time. We are talking about 1849, the period of the California gold rush. Some of the French immigrants who came seeking their fortune started to make bread, based on their traditional way of using sourdough as a starter. Under the influence of local airborne microorganisms, they made their typical sponge dough. It became a round, white bread with a few incisions on the top. Once baked, the bread shows its typical orange crust covered with blisters. The taste is characterized by a pronounced sourness, and soon this bread came to be called San Francisco sourdough bread. Nowadays, you will mainly find this bread in the Bay Area of San Francisco, where it became a kind of tourist attraction, especially on Fisherman's Wharf. Many restaurants present it on their menu, and one of the traditions is to use the bread as a kind of bowl wherein a hot, delicious soup is served. Today, this classic bread is still eaten, and this is the typical way to do it. This bread has a typical taste and flavor.
Good.
But the San Francisco Bay Area offers much more possibilities regarding sourdough. This is the San Francisco Baking Institute, and inside we are going to meet Michel Suas, who will give us more insights on the San Francisco sourdough. Michel Suas is co-founder and president of this institute, which is renowned for its artisan bread and pastry education, as well as for its consulting towards top domestic and international bakeries. Michel is French and has a passion for sourdough. In analogy with the first French gold diggers, he came to San Francisco, followed by a few other bakers, and opened new perspectives for sourdough bread in San Francisco. It all started in the 80s.
In the 80s, what happened is the sourdough was actually multiple small bakery used to produce in the Bay Area. When we say Bay Area, San Francisco area, those kind of disappear, and the sourdough start to become manufactured at a large scale. And the revival started with new younger chefs who actually start their own restaurant, and they want quality bread. First, the aroma was not so acidic. It was to try to have the flavor of the wheat, the flavor of different fermentation, rather to be acidic. And also more crust. Crust can give flavor to bread, but also it'll give you a better appearance too.
Thanks to projects like the Baking Institute and the constant development of new small bakeries, San Francisco sourdough bread became very popular again. But social factors played an important role too.
What happened now is because of the city, cars have become an issue. Younger people don't want to have a car. The parking is a nightmare. So we have more and more small retail bakery opening in the city, large city, and the consumption of bread is going back up through sandwich shop, or even now a coffee shop actually have a bakery inside where they actually sell toast bread.
And last but not least, we have the bread, of course. Local airborne microorganisms still influence the typical taste of the sourdough, but there is more.
We start using definitely starter, so because the pH level is much higher, and we use ancient grain, and one of the flour we use is kamut. And if you could smell that one smell acidic but lactic acid, and it almost smells like honey at the same time. So we try to have a flavor, but at the same time, a lot of moisture. A bread like that is actually produced, retarded overnight, and you get about 80% water on those type of bread. The other thing that's happening at those bakery, nutrition value of the bread, and also the fiber on the bread, and also the lower protein flour is used now. We call ancient grains, so it's easy to digest. And the starter, the fermentation with the starter actually also help to digest. So all those is why people consume and purchase those bread.
Due to Michel's enthusiasm, I am impatient to discover a few of these bakeries. So I got back in the car to visit a few of them. This is Acme Bread. In this shop, one can find a large variety of sourdough breads. Back in 1983, Steven Sullivan, the founder, wanted to introduce something new.
So we were not thinking so much that what we were doing was sourdough baking. We were thinking that what we were doing was natural leavening. So we were leavening the bread with the wild yeasts that occurred naturally in the flour and in the environment, and learning to manage them. So we weren't so, it wasn't so much a test for us to see how sour we could make the bread. It was a matter of exploring the different kinds of flavors that different traditions found from this kind of system. Different balances of flavors, balances of acidity, some almost not even acidic at all, that were possible with natural leavening, where you're sort of taking care of your own yeast and finding your own yeast in your own baking environment.
It became a success. Within the years, Acme Bread assortment grew from 4 types of bread to more than 100 different baked products.
There's a great interest in breads that have had something more than just a minimal cursory fermentation. I don't know of any of the serious bakers in the Bay Area, and there are more and more and more, who don't think that natural leavening and sourdough baking is among the most important things that they do. It's just the source of baking. It's, yeast baking is no longer really considered the default. I think there's an acknowledgement that the first baking, the original baking, was found in natural fermentation of the grains, and that should really be the center of your baking if you're serious about what you're doing now.
This shop and the whole Acme concept is a real success. Now I'm curious how sourdough bread is produced in a slightly larger bread production too. Here we are at Semifreddi's, and they say the Bay Area is our world. Let's go and find out. In this production area, Semifreddi's creates over 25 recipes and produces more than 50 different breads and pastries on a larger scale, but all handmade. I am really impressed by the atmosphere and the enthusiasm of the employees here. Tom Franier, the co-owner, knows why.
There's 3 rules of success, in my opinion, in business. Take care of the employee, take care of the employee, take care of the employee. Not even take care of the customer first, because they will take care of the customer.
A lot of different sourdoughs are needed to make all these different types of bread, that's for sure. JT Treadgold knows all about it, and he leads me to their hidden treasures.
Okay, for consistency, we have a special room for fermentation. We run this room around 50 to 60 Fahrenheit, depending on the time of year. It's a controlled room, keeps everything super clean and super safe. And here it is. This is refreshed every 12 hours.
Every 12 hours?
Every 12 for the stiff, for the liquid every 24. It's just what works for us. There's no wrong fermentation schedule and there's no right, of course. Every baker prefers certain styles. We want to taste the wheat with the sour, not just bang sourdough. Right. A lot of companies make the very heavy sour, but it's not what we traditionally do.
And then this one?
Yeah, this is the old favorite. This is the original one from years ago. Everything lived, everything came from this beautiful, it's probably one of our favorites. It's very versatile. Of course, the traditional whole wheat sour here. Again, these are both on a 12-hour regimen. It's easy to maintain. These live outside the cooling box. Sometimes in the summer they go inside.
You know, we want to make a sourdough that people of my parents' generation would remember and say, hey, this is really good.
This comes just from the stiff sour and a little bit of the liquid. We like to blend the two for this bread. It has that beautiful lactic and acidic flavors. So this is one of our most popular breads too, so we must be doing something right, you know?
The view of all these breads made me hungry. Time to have a break in a coffee and bread restaurant. This is Bar Tartines, a trendy restaurant in San Francisco where sourdough bread is used as a main ingredient in the menus. People can actually see how the bread is prepared in the center of the restaurant. This concept is a real success, and co-founder Chad Robertson explains us why.
Before I became a baker, I trained to be a chef, and I love being in the kitchen, and I love sort of thinking of ways to use the bread as part of a meal. You know, a lot of the way that I eat is based around bread, and I also really, one of the things I enjoy the most being a baker is collaborating with chef friends. My chefs here, Nick Bala and Courtney Burns, we sort of play off of each other's ideas, and it keeps the inspiration and creative process going. I use one starter, but if I want to create a new starter, I start with the one I have and feed it with a different flour or with different temperature or with unpasteurized, you know, apple cider or something like that. But I maintain one base starter all the time, and then I modify it if I want to use something different. Traditionally, bakers bake at night and they fill up the shelves, and the bakers go home and you open the doors, and we are baking all day long, so it's very fresh food. You know, we use the best ingredients. We're very fortunate here in California to have amazing produce, amazing wheat. Just we have very, very good resources to use, and then we're very dedicated in trying to make good food with it. In the beginning, people thought this bread was maybe too dark. They thought it was burned or something, and it's been 12 years now that I've been baking this bread, and now it's normal. You know, everyone likes the crust, they like the flavor, and it turns out that what I'm making now, actually, a lot of people tell me was what San Francisco was very similar to San Francisco sourdough in like the 1940s, 1950s. As far as the color, there was a dark bake back then that was a very San Francisco thing. So in a way, like, I'm accidentally kind of making San Francisco sourdough like it was long before I was born. So people definitely there's definitely a following for this type of bake now.
Chad presented me his starter. The pronounced flavor and taste are obtained due to long fermentation caused by the typical microorganisms of the San Francisco bake. San Francisco sourdough deserves undeniably a place in the sourdough library in Belgium.